What's good, everybody in Chicago? This is Kahlief here. I am rocking with friend of the show, Sam DeLong. We are going to be talking about our time with South of Midnight because I remember seeing you talk about your excitement for the game, and you put out this really fantastic review that I just got a chance to check out, and it's awesome. And I've been a big fan of your work and the care that with you write with. And I was like, this would be so much fun to get on the show and talk about all of our experiences on that stuff. But before we talk about the game, for folks who may not be familiar with you and your work, give them a little bit of background about who you are and how you got into the space.
Oh, yeah, sure. So I am a content writer and a video game journalist with cerebral palsy. And I actually got into game journalism after having kind of like this sort of near-death experience where there was this fire that destroyed my town and I was homeless. And, you know, at the time I was living on my friend's couch. All I had with me was like a backpack and like 2 days worth of clothes and like a laptop. And then I just said, screw it. And I ordered a capture card and you know, I built a PC during COVID, all that kind of stuff. And started making content. You've probably seen my headlines over at Collider.com, writing about things like, you know, Superman and Lois and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I'm also covering PlayStation for PSX Extreme, which is a longest running PlayStation outlet. Been around since 1999, and I also cover PC and kind of gaming news for an outlet called the Gamer Section. The main guy over there goes by Kano online. He's also a person of color, and we were also very excited about this game. And I actually just posted on Twitter about this game, and then somebody from Compulsion, you know, messaged me on LinkedIn and said, "Hey man, here's this game." And you know, as like a small-ish content creator, when you get like that first email that you're like, here's the code and here's the embargo information, and I think the only other game that I had gotten previous to this was when I was doing stuff for the Gamer Section, and I had gotten a code for like Skull and Bones, which turned out to be a trash fire. But this game, not that. Okay, this is not that at all. But I am so yeah, that's pretty much where you can find me, and you can find me Sam DeLong Games on pretty much any social platform there is. I post directly to X a lot of times. I have, you know, samdelonggames.com also on there, and you know, just all the stuff. So yeah, I just writing about games and kind of, you know, it's never too late for you to decide that you are going to do what you want to do. Like, is it going to be hard? Yes. They're going to like there are moments where I'm just like, ugh, you know, I don't even want to get out of bed today. Like, you know, it's so funny. I have this other day job, but I call that job my other job. That's like where my head's at, like, you know, where my space is. So, yeah, that's pretty much it.
I love that, and I appreciate that a ton, because I think, you know, a lot of folks, and I'm sure you get this question often about like, well, how do you get started, and when did you get started, and all that stuff, and you know, we are a little bit older in the game, you know, we've been in it for a minute, but it's always great to be able to find folks who have not only, you know, gaming perspective, having played a lot of games over your lifetime, but also real life experiences to be able to kind of pull from, to be able to make those analogs. And I think for a game like this, there are a ton of like real life, you know, mentionables in this game, right? There are lots of moments that really kind of connect with the human experience in that way. When you first were kind of getting in the purview of South of Midnight, what was the first thing that you kind of latched onto that you were like, ooh, this is a thing I want to cover, and this is something that might resonate with me in some way?
So I'm actually really glad that you brought that up, because one of the things I wanted to bring up is, you know, I'm from the Bay Area, and I grew up in you know, in the very early part of life. I grew up in like the Haywood, sort of Oakland sort of area, and when it comes to seeing certain things, and I'm saying this as like I'm Irish, I'm the whitest you could be, okay, like, you know, but I have seen, like, you know, friends of mine get racially profiled in front of my eyes. People get beaten down, but also as like a disabled person, that is also a space where sometimes you feel like people are telling you you don't belong here. People are telling you that you're not allowed to be here because of what you look like or how you walk, or you know, I was in a wheelchair until I was 16 years old, and so you know, like I get that. But in terms of the game, what really connected with me is I watched the documentary, and it was Hazel, and Hazel has that personality where like either you are her or you know someone who's exactly like her. Like, you know, she has that little bit of snark, but she's also kind of sweet, but she has that like teenager, like, you know, I can do it myself. Like, you know, kind of, you know, there's a moment in the game where she's talking to like the giant catfish, right? And she says something that is kind of like, she's sort of rolling her eyes at what is happening, but also kind of doing that fantasy character thing where like, there's some weird shit happening, but I guess this is what we're doing. Like, you know,
there are tons of moments where she is like kind of pulling in and understanding that the world around her isn't what she thought it was, right? And it's those kind of interesting moments where she's learning about herself while also learning about the world at the same time.
Yeah, and I mean there are parts in this story that like, I don't want to say broke me, but like kind of just sort of, and you know, we can get into all that too, but I'm just like, I was into it. I was into it from the animation point of view. I was into it, you know, the thing about Compulsion too, if you look at their other games like, you know, We Happy Few and Contrast and those things, is they make the games that they want to make. And they kind of have this way of, they put the aesthetic or whatever the vibe is kind of before everything else. And not in the sense that gameplay is secondary, but it's not something that they don't put the a lot of times if you're going to write something, like just like write a story, for example, either you write the setting first, you build the characters around that, or you write the characters first and you kind of do it the other way. They kind of just have sort of a story in mind that they want to tell. And you know, it was just it was just something that kind of like spoke to me, like, you know, the stop motion animation, the deep South kind of setting and stuff, some of which I am familiar with, some of which I'm not familiar with. But I think that when you're going into a story from a different culture that maybe you're not as familiar with, this is an opportunity for you to learn something about yourself through the experience of others. Like, you know, and there's some universal themes in this game too, that like, you know, carrying around trauma and how it weighs you down, and like, you know, the guilt of not being good enough. Like, you know, all of that stuff is, you know, it's in there, but it's, you know, man, yeah, it's good stuff. So you know, yeah. So to answer your question in a long way, it was Hazel, and I watched the documentary and I was like, I'm in. Let's do this. You know.
Yeah, it was one of those things where I think, you know, for our show, when we're constantly talking about, you know, how we want to, you know, support and showcase people of color and marginalized folks, and when you get a chance to see characters who don't often get a chance to be in the limelight, in the spotlight. While also in a setting that never really gets shown. Like I can count on one hand how many games I know that are actually like set in the South, right? It's like Mafia 3, Infamous when they went to New Orleans, and then this.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
like what were your thoughts about the fact that they decided to kind of set this in a place that was not the norm of what we kind of see in the game space?
You know, in terms of kind of the Deep South, I always feel like the Deep South has like a soundscape sort of all of its own. And I like, you know, even playing through this when they were doing the, you know, I'm playing this game and I have my headphones on, but I kind of have like one ear cuff, you know, my wife is in the room, and then she's like, are those crickets? Do I hear like crickets in the background? You know, and that is kind of what it reminded me of like one of those towns where like everybody knows everybody, and like everyone goes to check on their neighbors when stuff happens, and I was super into it, but also from a point of view of I don't really know a lot about this from a certain point of view, but that is what makes it interesting to me. That's why when I see people online who are like, ugh, I'm not going to play this game because of these superficial reasons, I was all, why are you closing yourself off to something because of whatever of reasons that you've just decided that are not and I'm like, well, then like you always hear people being like, sometimes when people say negative things, they're like, oh, this isn't for you. Well, then maybe it should be.
Right.
Like, like
Yeah.
maybe you should open yourself up to things. Like, I mean, I like Batman, but I'm not rich. I don't have dead parents. Like, I don't need to connect to everything in every way. Like,
I love that as the way you frame that. Like, I love that. But I'm with you, right? Where I think it's like it feels like this is a very new thing, right? In at least in the last 5 to 7 years in the gaming space, in the community space, I've never seen so many people self-select out of fun. Like,
yeah.
I've never seen so many people raise their hands and be like, I don't want to have fun with anything.
Right.
And it feels like this is another one of those moments where, like you said, and I love the fact you talked about the kind of learning from people. Like, even for me, in a way, I'm not from the South. I'm from the North. I'm from the Bronx in New York. Like,
yeah.
I don't have tons of reference for the South except for family and friends who lived in the South and those things. So even in those respects, I am learning about elements of Southern life through this game in its way.
Right.
Were there parts of that journey through the game that you plucked something from it and were like, oh, that's really interesting, and I didn't understand or know about that when it came to kind of setting in those ways?
I think that the first thing that I sort of attached to in this game was how Hazel and her mom have this grandmother that is not really like part of their lives. And they're sort of in this other, she's sort of been compartmentalized in this other, like, oh, we don't talk to her because of this. And I have parts of my family that, people on this side, like, we don't talk to them anymore because of these reasons. Like, and that was the part that like really kind of got to me immediately. I mean, the other thing too is that when I was living in Haywood, we went to this like we lived in this predominantly black neighborhood, and my dad's name was Dwight, but everyone called him Whitey, not because that was an abbreviation of his name, but because we were but we went to like this like fire and brimstone like church. This, raising hands and stuff. And, this like, Southern Baptist church. And all we ever did was pray and eat, that's all we did, just pray and eat barbecue. That's it, and, I was like, whatever, I like corn on the cob. Let's do this. Like, but what I got from this was that's the reason why I bring that up is because I started thinking about that, thinking about all the neighbors that I had who would just come by. And my very best friend in the world for 15 years was the guy that lived right across the street from me, and his dad was like the pastor of this church, and we would just play Sega Genesis, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 in his garage, shoot pool and stuff. And it made me want to go to the South. Like it made me want to kind of be in this area and hear those crickets and see alligators and because I mean like I've never seen an alligator in real life. It may as well be a dragon. All right, let like okay. So that was what I got from it, like from the early part of it when the game first started. It was Hazel has this other family member. that she's, not. And there is a part with her specifically when there's like, there's like a few moments in the story that broke me, and it definitely has to do with Bunny. Like I'm like, ugh, like,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I don't know if that answers your question or not, but
No, of course it does. I think revelation from that part of the discussion today is that, one, we both had a neighbor called Whitey. I also had an aunt named Bunny.
Yeah.
So it's like those parts were funny to have kind of in the mix. But I think, yeah, like I keep coming back to this understanding that like found family is one part of it, but also
for sure.
like understanding family dynamics in those ways is really interesting in the way that they kind of poke at it from the game perspective. Because
Yeah.
I can't front, like, seeing as spoilers, there will be some spoilers in this discussion.
Oh yeah. I was hoping so.
Yeah, but like seeing that basically Grandma Bunny was white, I was like, oh, interesting.
Yeah. I was not expecting that either. I would like,
I was like, huh, okay, so Hazel is the product of a mixed marriage. And that was also a revelation as well.
Yeah.
I thought it was cool the fact that they kind of brought the father into that discussion and talked about the relationship there, and also that Bunny wasn't financially supporting them at all in any form or fashion, even though they were basically her grandkids and her daughter-in-law.
When she goes to the house, like when the hurricane hits, and she doesn't know where her mom is, and she goes to the house, and Bunny's like, "Oh, is that you? Oh, you got big." And I'm like, "Bitch, how long has it been since you've seen your granddaughter?" Like, like, I just.
I mean, estranged families are estranged, right? But it's even weirder when that person is literally down the road from you, right? It does. Yeah, like Hazel can walk to your house.
Yeah, like what? You don't see her at the store. Like, I mean,
right.
I don't know what small southern town, Prospero is based off of, but I imagine it's one of those towns that has like one store, one post, I mean, maybe, but it also has that air of, oh, well, there was a mine that like abused its workers to death, and like, there's like a big oil company that like probably was paying its citizens a substandard wage, and all this stuff. My dad was he's retired now, but he was very blue collar. He's an auto mechanic, so he like worked with his hands, like grease under the fingernails, and but like he also was the guy that when he went to work it was dark, and when he came home it was dark. He's like a vampire, like he came home, he was awake for 4 hours, he ate dinner, and then he just went to sleep because he had to get up at 4:30 in the damn morning. But yeah, I did want to say, I know we mentioned earlier that is it okay that I'm not wearing headphones? Is it not messing with the?
No, it's totally fine. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have a dynamic mic, so it's I got all the doodads. But
no, you're totally fine. The question I want to ask you is like, so give me your, since you finished the game and you put up your review, give me your kind of 360 view of this game. Like what were the highlights, the lowlights? What were the kind of big moments for you? There's a lot of themes in this game that were very, very powerful. Give me your kind of, synopsis of what you got a chance to play and how it made you feel.
Yeah, I think that this will be great for people who, kind of are on the fence, or, they don't know. I think that it's a third-person action game that is gorgeous. It looks amazing. Like, I was playing this game on PC. It's got incredible lighting. It's got, Hazel is in caves, and they have, light coming in through trees and grass and stuff like that. The moment-to-moment gameplay reminds me very much of like a Jak and Daxter 1, where you have kind of like that. There's like a start and stop to its animation flow, and gameplay wise, it doesn't do anything to like reinvent the wheel. You're gonna wall run and you dash, and there's a parry and all that kind of stuff. but it has this sort of chapter based system where the story is kind of this slow burn that at first I wasn't sure if it was going to work. Like, you get 5 chapters in and you still haven't had a boss fight yet. And you're like, okay, when's the big crocodile going to show up? Like, kind of thing. But then when it hits. And, like I said, it's got themes about family trauma. And, Hazel I get the sense from her that she has herself under a lot of self-imposed, I have to be the best pressure because, and as someone who is a single dad and was also like, because Hazel's mom was a social worker and I was a kid in the system too, in that way, that's one of the things that resonated with me too. But because she has a single mom, kids who have single parents, they do this. They have this like, I have to be better than other people because everyone is already judging me for whatever reason. And she has this line in the movie where when the house first floats away and she's like, I'm always fast enough. And it feels like she feels like she's always running to get somewhere and she always feels like she's never going to make it. Like, and you see that journey of her where like she has a hero's journey in this game where she goes from I'm doing the thing that I'm doing for the selfish reasons why I'm doing it because I want to, save my mom or whatever, to I am doing this other thing because I have a responsibility to help these people because I have these powers. Like, and so what I would say to people who are kind of on the fence about it is that the gameplay is fun. Also, spend points in your upgrades. If you upgrade your character, combat will get a lot easier. I guarantee you. Do 2 dashes in a row will save your life. I guarantee you. But it's the story that will carry you through. It is, and also the voice actress for Hazel, Adrienne Ray, she has some, she's good. Like at first when the game starts, she kind of has that teenager snarky stuff, but when like the really dark stuff really starts happening and it starts to weigh on her a bit, man, there's like I said, spoilers, there's a scene where basically the house gets swept away and she thinks that her mom is dead. Like she's convinced she's dead. And she's, she's sitting there on the dock and she's crying and like, and you're just like, ugh, like, like this game is worth it. This is a story that you need to experience regardless of whether you're from the South or whatever. Like, and I'm sure some people are going to have their meh gripes about the gameplay. I think the gameplay is actually fun. And like I said, especially when you start pouring points into the upgrades where you're like, there's a push and there's a pull. And, now when you do a pull, you do like more damage. And it sometimes in games, I feel like upgrade trees, you don't even, you don't even need to upgrade anything. Yeah. That is not this. If you want to have an easier time, also in the accessibility options, if you just want to experience the story, you can turn off combat.
Yeah.
Like there's you can just hit a slider and then every time you get to a combat encounter, it'll just say, oh, are you sure you want to skip this combat? You can choose yes or no. So if you think the combat is too hard, but I think that if you skip the combat, you are also missing out on the boss fights. And, when they first announced this whole, each boss fight is going to have their own like musical score and theme song, I was like, that's not going to work. Right. Like that sounds cool, but I don't think they're going to be able to like pull that in. And yeah, I mean, you go to, Two-Toe Tom and then when you're fighting the guy in the nightclub, some of them are, more traditional, hit the bad guy, drain the life bar stuff. Some of them are a little bit more, you can only hit them during this moment. But the other thing that I do like is that the boss fights are segmented. So each time you get one of the segments, well, it gives you a save point. So just make you redo the thing that you just did Like, so, there were so many times where like I was getting my butt kicked. It was doing like the heartbeat, you're about to die.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, if I just, unravel 2 more dudes, I can make it to the end of this encounter. Like, but yeah, I think that this is just a story worth telling. It takes its time. It doesn't take too like it doesn't feel drawn out, but it also doesn't feel like anything is being filled in for padding either. It's just the right amount of, my only complaint in terms of like the general, game is that I feel like the crouton stuff sometimes are a little clunky, like where I'm like, okay, I'm going through the thing to do the thing, but I actually would have liked it if there would have been like an environmental puzzle here to kind of break it up a little bit. But like I said, I would still give it like it. If I were to give it a score, and I don't usually like, I think people are too obsessed with scored, with numbered scores. But if I were to give it a score, I would give it a 9 out of 10 or a 4 out of 5, easy.
I think the crouton stuff for me was also a little bit hit or miss when it came to those segments of the game. I loved it as a part of your skill tree to be able to use crouton. I'd like taking over the it was super cool.
If there is an upgrade that you should do first, it's that one. Okay.
I agree. I think a lot of people forget that like you get folks who haven't played it yet. I think there's a space there where you're like, oh, this thing actually is really, really helpful to get me out of certain parts of a fight. And it gives you a space to kind of like let those things fight each other while you're also kind of getting out of the way.
Yeah, so if you go into an area with like it's got like kind of the more bigger enemies, you can take over one of those, or you can take over one of the smaller ones to beat the snot out of the big one. Like it'll make it a lot easier. Some of them, like some of the really big ones, like the kind of like blob-ish ones, then even those. It does not work. It'll work for like 3 seconds, and they're like, nope.
It's not as helpful because they don't really attack the things you want them to attack. And I'm like, no, hit that thing over there. Go hit that. And they're like,
I was like, why are you still in this animation where you haven't thrown your thing yet? What's going on here? But I mean, it's just what's really funny. The one thing that I was thinking to myself as I was going through this game is I was like, okay, I know this game is linear, and I know that it's chapter based and it's short. I was like, what if this game was a Metroidvania? Like, if this game was a Metroidvania, I'd be like if they did a sequel where they were like, oh, we're just going full blown, Metroidvania, I'd be like, okay, let's do it. It would
work.
Like,
it would totally work. Like my one complaint was that, the in between fight spaces didn't feel like they had a lot to offer. Except for environmental kind of storytelling in those ways.
Right.
But I was wishing, I was like, man, like if this got the Infamous treatment and it was a much bigger landscape to be able to maneuver around and kind of play in some of those spaces for combat, that would be super, super cool to kind of broaden out the play space in some ways. But like, there were definitely some spots where you kind of feel like you're just going from combat encounter to combat encounter. That's why, like, when I would see like they have these like patches of extra XP that are called floofs, and you're like, oh, how can I get that? Like, which help you like how and so it does encourage you to kind of go off the beaten path. And sometimes you find things if you walk around a corner or if I would use the little guiding strand and be like, okay, well, it's telling me I'm supposed to go this way, but what if I went this way? I want to see what's over here. And I think in a bigger game, there would be things like side quests and, like there's a part where you go and you find this like old dude who's just like out in the woods, and I'm like, wouldn't it be cool if each one of these people that I was talking to were like quest givers that would tell me to go, even if it was like, go here and like, and fight this mini boss and then, come back or whatever. But that also would have made it longer. And, like I said, room for improvement for sure. But also like,
okay.
Yeah, I agree. I love the fact you talked about that, because I think I'm also a person now who is like, I give extra points or extra love to games that respect the player's time.
Yeah.
And that's awesome. Like, I love the fact that I was like, oh, and they were like, oh, it's 12 hours. And I was like, oh, I can finish this in a day. And, you know, if I sit down and kind of bum rush through it and do it, and it was good. I played over a couple of days to kind of, because I keep stopping and recording new things and taking screenshots of everything. And the fact that this game doesn't have a photo mode, I'm like, come on, this needs a photo mode so bad.
It was funny. I have the little on my Stream Deck. I have like the NVIDIA. You know, there's like one button that's like record the last 15 minutes, but then I have another one that's like take the screenshot. But then every once in a while, when I would do it, it would record. It would take a screenshot of like my secondary monitor. So it's no, don't take a picture of my OBS. Take a picture of the game, damn it! And you had to do it a second time. But it needs to get a photo mode. I actually had, you know, like I tweeted at Compulsion. I was like, hey, are you guys going to add cross save to this? Because that'd be cool.
I did see that.
Just to let you know, you know, so I wouldn't have to go back and redo it. And but there's this part of me like, I could go back and replay this in console. It's not going to take me that long, like, you know.
Yeah, like I think I'm going to probably do that too. Like, I'll bump up the difficulty a little bit and see what it feels like on that mode. And stuff. But yeah, like this game, I would have loved for this to have had cross saves, cross progression. Like, this thing needs a photo mode so bad in the worst ways. But I do want to talk a little bit about the themes in this game, because I think for the folks who are going into this without a ton of knowledge about it, you know, I tried to tell people once we did our review of like, this isn't a happy-go-lucky tale. Like, this isn't one of those like games where everyone turns out fine and you know, everyone is happy and they get resolution about the things that happen to them. Most often they absolutely don't.
Well, I mean, if you want to like go full spoiler in here, I think that the main thing is how, you know, Bunny basically had this child that was killed, and she spends the whole game trying to, you know, I love that thing in a game where you return to a place that you were previously, and the part towards the end when you go back to her, you're like out in front of the mansion again, and there's just stigma like everywhere, and you're just like, you know, but I mean, there's some serious trauma here that people go through, you know, people that are walled up inside trees, and people who are being segregated against, so they flee with their baby into the woods, but then they have to like leave their baby behind. Like, I'm just, you know, and also too, it also goes to, and you know, this is just something that's like kind of heavy for me personally, is like I was saying before, you know, Hazel's mom Lacey is a social worker, and so I'm very aware of like kids that have some not so great home lives, and they have to sort of survive on their own, or maybe they're like, you know, there was you know, my son is in his 20s, and you know, I was a single parent for a long time, and you know, he had a friend who was, I'm pretty sure this kid was homeless. Like, he didn't say it, like, you know, but like, you know, he'd come over and be like, hey, this kid just ate all of our food in like 2 days. Like, you know, what's up? And then, you know, I actually, he stayed with us for a little while, because I'm like, hey man, if you don't have somewhere to go, you have somewhere to go now. Like, you know, just, you know, but it's just stuff like that where, and also, you know, the whole thing with, you know, after I had finished the game, I restarted it on Series X because I wanted to do like an FPS, like, you know, comparison to see how it, you know, and I had forgotten that in the very beginning of the game, you kind of see Hugging Molly like way off in the distance. And the way that the game takes what you think is a villain and completely turns it on its head is like, man, like that's when I'm like, the writing for this is so good. Like, you know, when she goes to see it's not her dad, but it's like a guy that was like involved with her mom for a while.
Yep.
Like when I talk about something else that broke me, there's that scene where he kind of pours his heart out and he's like, I left because I knew I was never going to be good enough. Like,
Yep.
that like hit me where I live, like straight up, like, that pressure of, because all those years I was mom and dad for a while until, he was an adult basically. And that's a real pressure for me personally. That's like a real thing that I'm playing this game and it like how like when something hits you and you feel it like twisting you up. That is, and this is a dark fantasy tale. Do not let the stop motion animation or the cartoony presentation fool you. I saw another article this week that said that it was Pan's Labyrinth if Pan's Labyrinth was in the Deep South, and I'm like, man, that's actually pretty good.
That's
like
really good.
I'm like, like just this, it's a fairy tale, but not in the like I spent 3/4 of the game thinking like, oh, Lacey's dead. Like, like.
I mean, I spent most of the game not liking Bunny. Right?
Oh yeah,
and then because Bunny comes off as like Cruella de Vil.
And if I'm being totally honest, I still didn't really like her that much by the end.
I agree. No, I didn't like her, but I think she towards the end, and you understand what her trauma was.
Yeah,
she then becomes a sympathetic and empathetic character for at least for me, right? Where I'm just like, oh, it's the classic hurt people thing, right?
Yeah. When she does her thing where she's basically gonna push she ends up pushing Hazel off this cliff, and she says, why borrow when I can take? I'm like, that I'm like, you know what? I was starting to feel bad for you a little, and now I'm like, oh, you know what? Screw you, lady. Like,
I mean, there were surprises too in I think everyone's story. That because again, like the mythical creatures were, that's a big part of the game mechanic of the mythical creatures. You get a chance to learn what they're, how they became what they became,
sure,
and why they were what they were. I think did you have because I had a surprise that I did not foresee. Did you have in one of those stories? Did you have one of those characters? Did it kind of really flip your thinking about them?
I don't remember which one this was, but the one where the kid was walled up in the tree, and then we find out that he's still in the tree, that is something that I because I think when you start this, you are kind of in this headspace of these are monsters, and monsters are evil. Like, I mean. And maybe it's because I'm from like no one's ever been playing like a Devil May Cry game and been like, oh man, I feel really bad for the demon. Like, all right, like
no doubt.
I'm sure the demon's just having a bad day. But yeah, I felt for all of these people, like it. But I think the one with the tree was the one that like really like got me in terms of but it also kind of finding out about the whole hugging Molly thing too.
Yeah,
that she was actually helping kids rather than because you have a boss fight with this person, and then later on you find out, and then there's a whole sequence where you're chasing after her and you're trying to like apologize and sort of she Hazel wants to do right by her now and by the kids that she saved and it ties into like the whole backstory of her dad and like what happened to him and all that stuff so I would say that those two things probably are the two things that like really got me. The hugging Molly thing, especially because that was completely out of left field for me, where I was like, oh damn, like It was funny as like a content creator when the guy in the club is having his speech and he's saying, "Oh, I was never good enough." There was like this part. My brain was like, "Oh, I'm going to cut this into a short," and the caption's going to say, "When people say this game doesn't have good writing," like kind of thing, like
right. Yeah, I mean, I think agreed with that because I thought that moment was very powerful, and that speaks to me too. Again, goes back to that conversation about like the parallels between he and Hazel feeling like they weren't good enough. Like she says throughout the entire game, if I was only fast enough, right, I would be able to get to the thing. Like she's a track star, or in her life, and being able to. That would be the thing that's attached to you to be like, you're really fast, you can win all the time. But I think for me, the most surprising story in there was Two Toe Tom's, because Jolene, who is the pastor of the church, killed a man and then became the pastor of the church. And I was like, the juxtaposition of sin and salvation with her. Again, we don't really see a lot of women pastors in games at all, ever.
Right, or just in general,
in general,
for sure.
or like women taking prominence in the church,
and
especially in the South.
And the most shocking thing about that is that town isn't that big. Yep. Like, there's got to be other people in that town that 1,000% knows what she did, and just they all kind of sort of sweep it under the rug or whatever. That whole the song too, like the two-tone Tom song is like, sometimes I still hear it, like
yes. Yes. I agree.
But yeah, it
So we're coming up on time, which flew. Jeez, that thing went fast.
Oh, dude, I could talk to you all day for sure.
I know, seriously, dude. Like we gotta have you just come on, spawn on me, and just come hang out.
Yeah.
But any last thoughts that you wanted to share with the audience about overall feelings, overall thoughts, anything you think we missed that we needed to talk about that feels like an important thing for folks who are just coming into the game that they need to know.
I would say that so in my review, I mention, and this is like the headline of the review, that this is the game that the industry needs, right? And I would say that we need to be more supportive of not only games that have this really important subject matter and things that tackle these issues and stuff, and support these smaller teams and whatnot, but this is a game that doesn't have like a $2 million budget. It wasn't in development for 7,000 years. It's not a soulless live service husk of a game. This game has some soul and some heart. It's got a great protagonist that I hope we haven't seen the last of. And so I would say that if you have Game Pass, or if you're mildly curious about this game, take 10 hours. Give yourself to chapter 10, and if you're not feeling it and you want to dip out, that's fine. But and the chapters are not that long. They go by like that, like then 20 minutes. So I would say that for a final thought, give this game a shot, because Compulsion has put something really special here together that I think is a story that needs to be told. That stories, I had seen you post earlier that that this game is good for the culture, and you're talking about Black culture, of course, but this is also a game that can bring cultures together that maybe are not as close as they could be. This is an opportunity for us to to branch out to things that we maybe don't understand that we could. And that we can to not to use like, a really stereotypical example, but like it's like at the end of that movie, A Time to Kill. I don't know if you're familiar with that movie. Samuel Jackson, Matthew McConaughey, and there's that scene at like the very end where like Matthew McConaughey and he goes over to Sam Jackson's house. He's like, oh, I thought maybe our kids could play together. Like that's what this game is. Like look on the fence on the other side of the backyard and invite someone to your cookout. Okay. Like use this as an opportunity to experience a story that will teach you things that like without like preaching to you or like beating you over the head with it, you will understand sort of a point of view and you'll have a fun time doing it. Not a happy-go-lucky time, a dark time, a time that maybe you'll be like, man, maybe I should call my grandma. All right, like
yeah, right? Like give somebody a hug, kind of stuff. Yeah, no doubt.
But yeah, go on Game Pass, check this game out. I also do want to just give one final shout out to Compulsion for taking a shot on a basically very small creator. So but yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. So
well, I think first of all, thank you for sharing that. And second, I think my last point will be there are very few games that ask you to be empathetic in these kinds of ways. And to think about empathy and to think about sympathy and to think about feeling for one another is always a good thing in the video game space. And it feels like Compulsion continues to do things in their wheelhouse that make you think as opposed to just play. And that's awesome. So word. Sam, thank you so much for coming and rocking, man. Like I've always
of course, yeah. Hey, anytime you want me to swing by, I am always down to hang out. It's been a blast today. So yeah, just let me know. I know that we had been kind of trying to connect for the last because things happen, GDC, blah blah blah, all that. But yeah, anytime you want me to swing on by, I am more than happy to do that. So yeah,
you have a open seat here in Chicago whenever you want to come through.
All right,
on the show. Give the folks at home really quick another blast of where they can find more of your work.
So you can find me over on at Sam DeLong Games on pretty much every social platform. You can find me over on Gamer Section, PSX Extreme. I post I'm directly to X a lot. So at Sam DeLong Games or at samdelonggames.com is probably the quickest and fastest way.
Badass. Everybody go give Sam some follows. Go check out more of Sam's work. Sam is brilliant and always on point with his commentary and reviews and all of that. We're going to jump up out of here for this conversation around South of Midnight, which I'm sure that we're going to have more discussions about this game throughout its lifespan and more things moving forward. But wanted to thank all of you for hanging out with us for a couple of almost an hour talking about the wonderful game that we got a chance to play, and hopefully we'll be able to do more of these very, very soon. Until then, we're going to get up out of here, and I hope you all have a wonderful day, and go play South of Midnight. It's so good. You really got to go check this thing out and get some
like I said, just give it till chapter 10, all right?
And until then, we're going to get up out of here. Much love to you all. Have a wonderful day, and peace.